we got Justice Clarence Thomas. Now, I've been holding on to this story for a little bit now, and one of the reasons that I've been holding on to this story, shout out to my dog Quest is in the building. I appreciate you, Quest. I've been holding on to this story for a little bit now. And one of the reasons I've been holding on to it is because I know that once a witch hunt starts coming out, especially when you're a person that's a conservative Supreme Court justice like Clarence Thomas, that will not be the end of it. Because one thing is for sure and two things is for certain. Blackity blacks get behind anybody that they think does not think like them, even if it's to their own detriment. But we got a couple different things that we want to go over right now. So let's talk about Clarence Thomas, ladies and gentlemen.
Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is facing questions again about his failure to disclose transactions with a Republican megadonor. A new report by ProPublica details a 2014 real estate deal in which Harlan Crow's company paid $133,000 to Thomas and his family to buy the home where the justice's mother lived. Like the luxury vacations uncovered by ProPublica last week, the sale went unreported on Justice Thomas's financial disclosure forms.
Now, here's the problem. All right. I'm on my work laptop too, so I'm managing different notifications and meetings while we talking here. Here's the problem, y'all. A, I would never in a million years ever, and I mean ever, run for any kind of public office or for any major seat that is held, voted on by, or is participated in by anything from a political perspective or from the voters' perspective, because you open yourself up to a level of scrutiny that is unmatched by anything that I've ever seen in my entire life. And I paid attention to it. And as a matter of fact, I was talking to Kwame, former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, got him on speed dial, talk to him on a regular basis. And I said, Kwame, now that you've been on both sides, right? You've been on the regular side and you've been on the side of actually being immersed in politics. Where do you think that the most change can happen? If you want to change something, if you want to change your city, if you want to change your community, if you want to have an impact in any way, where does the most change come from? And he said, it does not come from actually being involved in the political process as far as actually being a major figure, a mayor, a city councilman, a treasurer, a president, a governor. He said most of those people that come over from the business world, they don't get it. It's cutthroat over here. You're being led to the slaughter. We've seen it with Rick Snyder. Rick Snyder was a businessman that thought that he can make an impact as the governor of Michigan, and eventually he was leaving with his head on a plate. Because one thing is for sure and two things is for certain. Politics is a completely different game. And you're going to have to completely be above board. And when I say above board, I mean all the way above board. I mean basically living like a pauper and possibly then making money later as a result of participating in a political process like Obama did, in which they then made the majority of their money off of speeches, Bill Clinton, books, and so on and so forth. But as far as actually being the same from a business perspective as you were before you became elected to office with their paltry salaries, you really gonna have to be a public servant.
Gabe Roth is the executive director of Fix the Court, a group that advocates for court reforms, and joins us now. So Gabe, this $133,000 transaction between Justice Thomas and
Ray Lynn says, there were tons of black YouTubers and celebs speaking about Shanquella Robinson when it first happened, and you ignored it and said, no, I didn't. I acknowledged it. I said when all of the views and it was popular in the news, and when you can get a lot of views from it, that's when people were talking about it. But everybody forgot about it, and nobody actually did anything about it. They didn't call their legislative branches. They didn't advocate for it. None of the Black Lives Matter people was a part of it. Nobody actually did anything. Y'all have fucking burned down your own entire neighborhoods if a white person shoot a black guy, but you won't actually advocate for somebody that's truly innocent and call on your legislative branches to do anything. I didn't ignore it. I'm realizing that now that it's not the popular thing to talk about, don't nobody want to talk about it no more. Because they want to talk about the thing that actually get the views instead of the things that's actually best for the black community. Don't ever talk about me. I'm actually on speed dial with the Father. I don't choose to ignore anything. I call this shit how I see it. I don't got no strings on me. Remember that. And fuck these blackity blacks. I don't give a fuck about what they talking about. I know what I'm seeing. I know what I see.
In Harlan Crow, which Justice Thomas didn't disclose as the law requires. This marks the first known instance of payments between the two men. What are the implications?
Well, it appears from what we know so far, and I think there's more information that's going to be coming out in terms of how exactly the $133,000 was delineated or just divided between the Thomas family and among the properties. But the federal law is very clear. It says that to follow the financial disclosure law that was passed in 1978 after Watergate, filers, including Supreme Court justices, have to provide a brief description, a date, and the value of any purchase, sale, or exchange of real estate that exceeds $1,000. So this is obviously more than $1,000. Even if you divide the property up several ways, it's more than $1,000. So this is a violation of that statute, and there should be repercussions for that.
This sounds like a witch hunt to me. It genuinely sounds like a witch hunt to me. $133,000 to purchase the home of your parents, in which we're not going to absolve Justice Clarence Thomas from having to disclose this if this is what the law is calling for him to do. But it does. It sounds like a witch hunt. It sounds like a witch hunt from those that would like to unseat him and impeach him. Because if somebody purchased the former home of your parents, obviously seeing it as a good investment, especially from a historical significance perspective, that's not even like I was very much expecting when I seen this story come across my desk. I was expecting for this to be a major amount of money. I thought that they was going to say that they spent $1 million, $500,000, $750,000 purchasing some real estate property. $133,000. It was probably in the hood. Come on, man.
If Justice Thomas had reported it, would that have put him in the clear, ethically speaking, or do you see other potentially deeper ethical transgressions here in this close relationship between Justice Thomas and Harlan Crow, given that Mr. Crow has been a Republican megadonor for years?
Love the leading question. Yes, I think that that's pretty clear. That I think there's more than just the statutory violation on the real estate. I mean, the $500,000 valued trip via private plane and yacht to Indonesia, and the trips to New Zealand and East Texas and upstate New York. I mean, there's nothing like this on the Supreme Court, at least since Scalia passed away, where you have a single individual reaping such largesse from another individual, the latter being the one giving the gifts, having a clear political bent and wanting the court to do certain things, even if he might not have had any cases. So I think we should be expecting more ethically from our justices, and it's a real shame that what we have shown over the course of several weeks with these ProPublica reports is that our justices are just thumbing their nose to whatever ethical, very weak, but whatever ethical rules exist, and that we're not in the good place when that's happening.
So let me share with you exactly what they're referring to when they're talking about him thumbing his nose and spending time and all of this other type of stuff, because it didn't start with the $133,000 real estate transaction that wasn't disclosed. This story started weeks ago. And so I'm going to share, and one of the things that I like to do is I also like to share news articles and videos specifically from other news outlets and media, NBC News, Peacock, PBS, even CNN sometimes, even the blackety black channels like BET with Vivica Fox in them, just to show you. I'm not just going to show you stuff from Fox News and stuff like that because I think that they lie sometimes. But I want to show you the well-rounded view and picture so that you can get a real good understanding of exactly what's happening with whatever issue we're talking about, but specifically Justice Clarence Thomas right now.
And turning now to a new report raising serious ethical questions for Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. The article released by ProPublica says that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas accepted luxury trips from conservative billionaire and Republican donor Harlan Crow. According to the report, Thomas, quote, has accepted luxury trips virtually every year from the Dallas businessman without disclosing them. NBC News has not been able to independently verify this reporting. Joining us now to discuss is NBC News Supreme Court reporter Lawrence Hurley. Lawrence, good morning. So first off,
Wait a minute. First of all, who is that little boy on the panel right there on the left-hand side? Man, listen, man, honestly, and this is just me observing because I have not seen this. This was loaded onto my computer. Let me go ahead and close that out really quickly. This was loaded onto my computer as a part of what it was that I needed to discuss today. But why do all of our women gotta look like little boys on the public? Like, I wouldn't even mind her getting a few pieces, get a little bit of weave. Neither here nor there. Let's continue.
what are some of the key takeaways from the report and the ethical concerns that are being raised? What exactly are those?
There's two sort of different issues here. One is the fact that these previously undisclosed trips were cost a lot of money and went on for a long time, and no one knew anything about this. The second question is whether there was an actual breach of the ethics rules that judges have, which is the question of whether Justice Thomas was required to disclose these trips on his annual reports that they have to issue. And that question is sort of debated.
I never said that she didn't have a pretty face. I said why she gotta have a boosie fade. That's all I'm saying. Like, whatever.
But the broader question is it acceptable for a justice to accept these kind of trips anyway, whether or not they're allowed? And that's a sort of broader question that isn't really covered by these ethics rules.
Lawrence, I wanted to touch on that because there has been growing pressure for the Supreme Court to adopt a code of ethics. They've been making a lot of headlines, and it's not for their rulings, but a lot of ethics concerns, as we're discussing. They say they tend to follow the code of conduct that judges for lower courts follow. But these trips that ProPublica unveiled are now being debated about whether or not they're in violation of that code. What can you tell us about that? And
I'm reading super chat, Shirley. Y'all wild. Y'all are wild.
If they are a violation, Thomas's trips, could he actually see repercussions for that?
Yeah, so actually up until like a month ago, it was really unclear what kind of exemptions there are for justices when they're reporting about trips involving personal hospitality, which is like basically when they're going to stay with their friends, going out for dinner, that type of thing. And it seems like there was a sort of a big loophole here where, things like private travel and staying at private resorts didn't necessarily have to be disclosed. And there's a lot of debate over that going on right now between ethics experts. Some think it should have been reported, some say it shouldn't. But the rules were just tweaked last month. And so now going forward, it's very clear that they do have to be disclosed. But
So, long story short, and I am going to be reading super chats. Y'all is wild in the chat. Long story short, he has been apparently taking trips and being on yachts and all of that other type of stuff from wealthy donors. And I don't think that should be excused. If we're going to look at this objectively, y'all, we can't just have the conversation based off of where we align politically, right? If you are going to be a conservative, if you are on the Republican side, and this is one of the things that I always tell people and that I hold people accountable for, whether you a man or a woman, and I see this happening within these spaces, even on YouTube, right? What happens to a lot of people is because they're on one particular side, they're unable to be objective in holding the real conversations and being accountable, or holding people accountable that may or may not do things that they agree with, right? And so if we're just looking at this objectively and we say, oh, okay, well, he was accepting a bunch of trips from Republican donors, in which I didn't think the $133,000 real estate transaction in which a rich Republican donor bought from him his mother's house, yeah, should he disclose it? Cool. That's something that I can overlook. But then you have to start really being honest and start looking at the ethics involved. And just because I'm conservative don't mean that I should overlook it. Just because he's a black man don't mean that I should overlook it. Is it a witch hunt? Possibly. But this is one of the reasons why you have to keep your nose clean, because when you accept the position of a Supreme Court justice, you also have to operate ethically so that we can remove any kind of possibility of tampering or problems that's associated with what it is that you're doing and the decisions that you're making on the Supreme Court. If you aligning with billionaires, honestly, come on, y'all, let's just be real. If you're aligning with billionaires and you're taking big trips, private planes, on yachts, all of this other type of stuff, it's very hard for me to believe that they doing this just because they like you and it's not something that they get in return as a result of it. And even if it is the case in which they're not getting nothing in return as a result of it, I can't prove that. I can't prove that. Honestly, I cannot prove that. We don't know, right? But you're supposed to be the highest court in the land. And so I don't know what's going to come as a result of this, but I do like Justice Clarence Thomas. I do like what it is that he stands for. I like the way that he votes. But we can't just act like and we can ignore the possibility of what's happening behind the scenes, because if you're going to drive out corruption, then you have to drive it all the way out, and you can't have it amongst any of us. But on the flip side of that, I want to see him keep that same energy for the people that they like also, right? If a conservative can be held accountable, why aren't we holding accountable Biden for what's on his son's laptop? Why aren't we if we can hold Trump accountable and say it's going to be a witch hunt because he paid a chick some money in order to bust it down and for that to go away? I also want to see what's going on with AOC and a lot of the different stuff that's happening over there. And it's just too much inconsistency, right? And the inconsistency is because everybody has agendas instead of actually wanting what is right and what's best for the country. And so I don't have a problem with people calling out the possibilities of a billionaire or billionaires influencing Justice Clarence Thomas. I think that they should do an investigation to find out whether or not he is corrupted and what his ties and his relationships are to that. Because the minute that he decided to take on that position in the Supreme Court, then you start to get held by a different standard. Would I ever want to be a politician? Would I ever want to be a judge? Would I ever want to be any of that? Absolutely not, because I think it comes with too much scrutiny. And I want to be able to take my trips if I got some billionaire friends from my billionaire friends, and that's what comes along with it. So keep the same energy. Keep the same energy on both sides and be objective. That's all I got to say about that.